For centuries, the galaxy had a name for Earth that humans themselves had never fully understood. Deathworld. On the official maps of the Galactic Survey, Earth was marked with a red warning symbol that meant no civilized species should attempt permanent settlement. Its atmosphere contained thousands of airborne microorganisms capable of attacking unprotected alien biology. Its oceans were filled with predators larger than most spacecraft. Its continents experienced violent storms, earthquakes, wildfires, freezing winters, and scorching summers. And even its most harmless-looking plants could produce chemicals capable of killing an unprepared creature within minutes. But the most terrifying thing about Earth wasn't its climate, its oceans, or its wildlife. It was the species that had somehow evolved there. Humanity. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council had classified humans as an unusual but technologically developing species, dangerous in theory but not particularly impressive in practice. They had no ancient empire, no massive interstellar fleet, and no biological adaptations that made them physically superior to most alien civilizations. They simply lived on a planet that seemed determined to kill everything that moved, and that was precisely why the Ver Expeditionary Fleet decided to investigate. The Ver were among the most advanced explorers in the galaxy. Their scientists had visited hundreds of worlds, cataloged thousands of species, and established colonies on planets that other civilizations considered impossible to inhabit. When their research division discovered that humans had survived for hundreds of thousands of years on Earth without genetic engineering or artificial environmental control, the Ver became fascinated. Their mission was supposed to be peaceful: 3 exploration vessels, 12 scientists, 20 security officers, and 1 diplomatic representative. Nothing more. They would land, study the environment, meet humanity's leaders, and return with a scientific report. Captain Serac stood inside the command chamber of the largest Ver vessel as Earth filled the observation screen. The planet looked beautiful from orbit. Blue oceans covered most of its surface. White clouds spiraled across the atmosphere, and green continents stretched beneath them. Serac stared at it and said, "It doesn't look like a death world." His chief scientist, Dr. Vela, replied, "Neither does a sleeping predator." The crew became silent. The Ver had already lost 1 probe during their approach. A microscopic organism had entered its ventilation system and destroyed several biological sensors within seconds. Another probe had been damaged by a sudden electrical storm, and a third had been attacked by something moving beneath the ocean. Still, the Ver believed these were manageable risks. After all, they had survived much worse. Their landing zone was selected in a remote forest far from major human population centers. The Ver wanted to avoid disturbing humanity until they understood the environment. Their shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, and almost immediately alarms began sounding. "Atmospheric pressure is higher than expected," one officer reported. "Oxygen concentration is unstable," another said. "Biological particles detected." Dr. Vela stared at the readings. "How many species?" The sensor hesitated. "Thousands." Captain Serac looked at her. "Thousands of what?" The scientist answered. "Microorganisms, insects, spores, airborne organisms. We can't classify all of them." Serac frowned. "Continue the descent." The shuttle touched the ground beneath a massive forest canopy. Its landing legs sank several centimeters into the wet soil. The doors opened, and 12 Ver stepped onto Earth for the first time. Their protective suits activated automatically, scanning the air, ground, and vegetation. For several seconds, nothing happened. The forest was completely silent. Too silent. Serac looked around and whispered, "Where is everything?" Then the forest exploded with sound. Birds screamed from the trees, insects began buzzing, branches shook, distant animals roared, and something enormous crashed through the vegetation less. Then 200 meters away, the Ver security team immediately raised their weapons. Dr. Vela shouted, "Don't fire. We don't know what it is." The creature appeared between the trees. It was a massive 4-legged animal, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick muscle and dark fur. Its eyes focused on the aliens. The creature stared at them for several seconds, then slowly walked away. One Ver officer lowered his weapon and whispered, "That animal could kill us," Dr. Vela replied. "Probably." Serac looked at her. "Probably." The scientist pointed toward the forest. Because we have only been here for 4 minutes and we've already encountered something capable of doing it. The expedition continued deeper into the forest. Their scanners, constantly detecting new biological threats, poisonous plants, aggressive insects, bacteria, parasites, and predators, the Ver began realizing that the red Deathworld symbol on Earth's map had not been an exaggeration. It had been an understatement. After 3 hours, they established a temporary research camp. Their scientists collected soil samples while security officers monitored the surrounding forest. Then one officer suddenly shouted, "Movement!" Everyone turned toward the trees. Several small creatures were approaching the camp. They looked harmless, almost like tiny furry animals, but their mouths revealed rows of sharp teeth. The security team raised their weapons again, and this time Serac ordered them to fire. Energy pulses struck the ground, scattering the creatures, but instead of running away, they disappeared into the forest. Dr. Vela stared at the readings. "Something is wrong." "What?" Serac asked. She pointed. "Toward the biological scanner, those creatures weren't attacking us. They were testing us." Serac looked confused. Testing us for what? Before she could answer, the entire camp lost power. Every light went dark, every scanner shut down, and something moved outside the perimeter. Then another movement appeared behind them, then another. The Ver security team formed a defensive circle, weapons aimed outward, but there were too many sounds. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Something was surrounding them. Serac activated his emergency communicator. "All units, prepare for extraction." But the signal failed. The forest seemed to swallow their transmission. Then suddenly, a bright light appeared between the trees. Everyone raised their weapons, but it wasn't an animal. It was a human vehicle. A military helicopter moving low above the forest. Its searchlight swept across the camp, and the Ver froze as a human voice came through their emergency frequency. "Unknown extraterrestrial personnel, this is the United States military. Lower your weapons and remain where you are." The Ver stared at each other in shock. Humanity knew they were here. Serac slowly lowered his weapon, but Dr. Vela was staring. At something else on the thermal scanner, dozens of large creatures were moving toward the camp. The human helicopter crew appeared to know exactly where they were. The voice returned, "Stay inside the light. Do not enter the forest. Whatever you do, do not enter the forest." Captain Serac looked toward the trees and asked, "Why?" The human voice became unusually serious. "Because you don't know what lives there." Then a second human transmission interrupted the channel, and this time the voice sounded frightened. "They're moving toward the camp. Get those aliens out now." Serac looked at Dr. Vela. "What is moving toward us?" She checked the scanner. Her face slowly changed. Something very large was approaching from beneath the ground. Something the Ver sensors had completely missed. Then the forest floor began to shake. Trees started falling one after another, and a massive shape pushed upward through the soil. The human helicopter immediately opened fire. The Ver watched in disbelief as the humans attacked the creature, with missiles and machine guns, but the creature barely slowed down. Serac stared at the monster and finally understood the truth. Earth wasn't dangerous because it had a few deadly creatures. Earth was dangerous because everything on it had evolved to survive something else. And humanity had survived long enough to become the one species that knew exactly how to live among them. Then the human helicopter pilot shouted through the radio, "Get the aliens aboard, because if that thing reaches the camp, we're going to show them the real reason Earth is called a death world." The human helicopter fired again, sending a series of bright flashes through the forest, but the enormous creature barely reacted, its armored back absorbing the impacts as it pushed through the trees toward the Ver camp. Captain Serac had never seen anything like it. The creature was more than 6 meters long, its body covered in thick plates of dark material, 4 powerful legs crushing everything beneath them, and its enormous head carried 2 glowing eyes that seemed completely unaffected by the helicopter's weapons. Dr. Vela stared at her scanner and whispered, "That isn't natural armor." Serac looked at her. "What do you mean?" She answered, "The plates are layered with minerals. The creature has been exposed to Earth's environment for years, possibly decades. Its body has incorporated material from the soil into its outer tissue." One of the Ver security officers shouted, "It's coming closer." Captain Serac looked toward the helicopter. The human pilot transmitted again, "Aliens, Get inside the aircraft now. Serac didn't need another warning. He ordered his team toward the extraction zone. The Veer ran across the clearing while the creature roared behind them. The sound was so powerful that several birds fell from nearby trees. The human helicopter lowered itself just above the ground. Its side door opened, and two humans reached out with weapons pointed toward the forest. "Move! Move! Move!" one shouted. The Veer climbed aboard. Dr. Vela was the last to enter, and the moment she stepped inside, the creature reached the edge of the clearing. The helicopter rose rapidly, and the monster slammed one enormous claw into the ground where they had been standing seconds earlier. Captain Serac looked through the window as the forest disappeared beneath them. He turned toward the human soldiers and asked, "What was that?" The pilot looked at him through the cockpit doorway. "You don't want to know," Serac replied. "We came to study Earth." The pilot gave a short laugh. "Then you picked a terrible place to start." The helicopter flew toward a human military base hidden several kilometers away. But during the flight, Dr. Vela noticed something strange. The humans weren't frightened. Every member of the helicopter crew seemed completely calm, even after witnessing a creature that had nearly killed an entire alien expedition. She asked one of the soldiers, "How often do you encounter creatures like that?" The soldier looked at her for a moment and answered, "Not that one, but something similar. Every few weeks." Vela stared at him. "And you survive?" The soldier smiled. "We grew up here." The helicopter landed inside a fortified military facility surrounded by walls, towers, and automated defense systems. The Veer were escorted into a large underground building where human scientists immediately began scanning them, checking their protective suits and collecting samples. Captain Serac demanded to speak with whoever was in charge. Within minutes, a human woman wearing a dark military uniform entered the room. She introduced herself as Commander Sarah Mitchell, United States Defense Research Division. Serac asked, "Why did your government know we were here?" Mitchell replied, "Because your ship entered our atmosphere." Serac looked surprised. "Our ship was invisible to your sensors," Mitchell smiled. "Invisible to our eyes, maybe. Not to our satellites." Serac asked why humanity hadn't contacted them before they landed. Mitchell answered, "Because we wanted to see what you would do." Dr. Vela immediately interrupted. "You knew the forest was dangerous?" Mitchell nodded. "We warned your people before you entered, but you didn't receive the message." Serac frowned. "No, we didn't." Mitchell looked toward the scientists and said, "That's because the forest interfered with their communication systems." The Veer were silent. Then Serac asked the question that had been bothering him since they arrived. "How do humans survive on this planet?" Mitchell leaned against the table and said, "We don't survive by being stronger than everything else. We survive because we learned." Dr. Vela looked confused. "Learned what?" Mitchell replied, "Patterns. Every predator has a pattern. Every storm has a pattern. Every disease has a pattern. Every poisonous plant has a pattern. Humans survived because they stopped trying to defeat Earth and started trying to understand it." Serac stared at her. "That sounds simple." Mitchell smiled. "It took us hundreds of thousands of years to figure it out." Suddenly an alarm sounded throughout the facility. Red lights began flashing. Every human soldier in the room immediately moved toward the exits. Serac asked, "What's happening?" Mitchell checked her wrist display. "Something followed you." Dr. Vela's face changed. "What?" Mitchell looked toward the security cameras. "The creature from the forest. It tracked the helicopter." Serac stared at her. "How is that possible?" "The base is fortified," Mitchell answered. "It doesn't need to break through the walls." Then the ground beneath them shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The Veer security team raised their weapons. Humans rushed through the corridors, and suddenly every light in the facility went out. Emergency systems activated. Commander Mitchell spoke into her radio. "All units, initiate perimeter protocol. Keep the aliens inside Sector 4. Do not engage unless it enters the inner compound." Serac looked at her in disbelief. "You're going to let it come here," Mitchell replied. "No, we're going to make it leave," Dr. Vela asked. "How?" Mitchell looked toward the ceiling. "With something it understands better than bullets." The ground shook again. Then the creature broke through the outer wall. Concrete exploded across the compound. Soldiers opened fire, but instead of targeting the creature's body, They fired small devices onto the ground around it. The devices released a high-frequency sound that the Vare couldn't hear, but the creature immediately stopped. Its head moved from side to side, confused. Then it backed away. Serac stared in disbelief. Mitchell explained, "Every creature has a weakness, not always physical. Sometimes it's a sound, sometimes a smell, sometimes a movement. Humans discovered this 1 year ago. The creature turned and disappeared into the forest." The soldiers lowered their weapons and the base slowly returned to normal. Serac looked at Mitchell and asked, "You could have killed it, couldn't you?" Mitchell shook her head. "Probably not. Not without destroying half the forest. And that would create a bigger problem." Dr. Vela suddenly realized something. "You weren't trying to defeat it. You were controlling its behavior." Mitchell nodded. "Exactly. Humans don't dominate Earth. We negotiate with it every day." That statement stayed with Serac because it contradicted everything the Galactic Council believed about humanity. On most civilized worlds, survival depended on technology, shields, climate control, and genetic adaptation. But humans had none of those advantages when they first evolved. They had only observation, cooperation, and intelligence. And slowly they had learned to turn Earth's dangers into knowledge. Serac asked Mitchell how many human cities existed on the planet. "Billions of people live here," she answered, "and they all survive." Serac looked stunned. "Your species lives across the entire Deathworld?" "Yes," Mitchell replied. "Deserts, mountains, oceans, frozen regions, forests, islands, underground, even above the atmosphere. Wherever humans can adapt, they live." Dr. Vela began reviewing the biological data collected from Earth and noticed something even more disturbing. The human body itself was highly adaptable. Humans could survive temperature changes, limited food, physical stress, and a remarkable variety of environments. But that wasn't the greatest difference. She asked Mitchell, "Why do humans keep exploring dangerous places?" Mitchell looked at her and answered, "Curiosity." Vela stared at her. "Curiosity." Mitchell nodded. "The same curiosity that brought you here." Suddenly, every alarm in the base activated at once, but this time the warning wasn't coming from the forest. It was coming from orbit. One of the Vare officers rushed into the room. "Captain, our ship is receiving an emergency transmission," Serac immediately asked, "from the fleet." The officer shook his head. "No, from the Galactic Council. The message was displayed on the screen. The Council had detected the Vare landing on Earth and demanded an immediate report." Then another message arrived, this one from a Carvax intelligence station. "Unknown human military activity detected. Possible planetary weapon development." Commander Mitchell looked at the screen and her expression changed. Serac noticed and asked, "What does that mean?" Mitchell didn't answer immediately. She walked toward another display and activated a classified satellite feed. The image showed Earth's atmosphere from orbit, but behind the planet were dozens of enormous objects hidden in space. Human ships, far larger than anything the Vare had seen before. Serac stared at the screen. "Those ships weren't mentioned in your public records," Mitchell replied. "Because they're not part of our public military," Dr. Vela whispered. "How many are there?" Mitchell looked at the number on the screen. "More than 300. Serac slowly turned toward her. "Why would a species living on a death world need a fleet like that?" Mitchell looked out through the reinforced window toward the dark sky. "Because Earth isn't the only thing we're prepared to survive," she said. "The galaxy is," and at that exact moment, the Vare received a final transmission from their homeworld. The Galactic Council had officially classified Earth as a potential existential threat, and they were sending a diplomatic fleet to investigate. Serac looked at Mitchell in horror. "They think you're dangerous." Mitchell gave a quiet smile and said, "We've been trying to convince them otherwise for a very long time." Then she looked toward the sky as the first human orbital defense platforms began activating. Because humanity's greatest secret was no longer the fact that it had survived a death world, it was what humanity had become after surviving it. The Vare diplomatic fleet arrived in the solar system 3 hours later, and the first thing Captain Serac noticed was that the humans were not panicking. There were no evacuation alarms across Earth, no military ships rushing toward the incoming fleet, and no desperate attempts to hide their technology. Instead, Earth continued moving as if nothing unusual was happening. Cities remained illuminated, aircraft crossed the atmosphere. Millions of humans continued their daily lives, and around the planet thousands of military systems quietly activated without the population even knowing. Serac watched the approaching Vare fleet through the observation window and counted more than 100 ships, each one larger than the expedition vessels that had brought him to Earth. Commander Mitchell stood beside him and said, "Your people came quickly," Serac replied. "They believe your planet may be a threat." Mitchell nodded. "They believe that because they don't understand us." Dr. Vela looked at the tactical display and noticed something strange. The human defense network had not targeted the Vare ships. Instead, every human system was simply tracking them. No weapons had fired, no warnings had been issued, and no fighter aircraft had launched. Vela asked. "Why aren't you attacking?" Mitchell answered. "Because they haven't attacked us." Serac stared at her. "But they have entered your territory with a military fleet." Mitchell shrugged. "That's not a reason to start a war." Serac looked confused. "Then what is?" Mitchell replied. "When someone decides they don't care whether your people live or die, that's when you fight." Before Serac could respond, every communication screen inside the facility activated simultaneously. The leader of the Galactic Council delegation appeared, a massive alien with silver skin and 4 eyes, surrounded by military advisors. He announced, "Humanity, by authority of the Galactic Council, you are ordered to deactivate all military systems and permit inspection of your planetary technology." Commander Mitchell looked toward Serac, then back at the screen and calmly replied, "No." The alien leader immediately demanded an explanation. Mitchell said, "Because you're asking us to surrender our defenses before we've even done anything wrong." The council leader responded, "Your species lives on a classified Deathworld and possesses weapons capable of destroying entire civilizations." Mitchell smiled slightly. "So does your species. But you don't call yourself a threat every morning." The council leader became visibly angry. "You are avoiding the question," Mitchell replied. "No, we're answering it. Humanity will cooperate with peaceful investigators, but we will not disarm while surrounded by military ships." The communication ended, and Serac looked at Mitchell with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "Your species doesn't seem afraid of the council." Mitchell laughed quietly. "Humans are afraid all the time. We just learned that being afraid doesn't mean you stop thinking." Suddenly an alert appeared on the tactical screen. The Vare fleet had deployed atmospheric drones. Serac immediately stood up. "Those are ours." Mitchell looked at him. "I know. I didn't authorize them." Serac quickly contacted his fleet and ordered the drones to stop, but the council delegation had already taken control of several ships. They wanted environmental data from Earth, and they believed the human government was hiding something. The drones entered Earth's atmosphere, scanning forests, oceans, and cities. For several minutes, everything appeared normal. Then one drone suddenly disappeared, another lost communication, and a third began transmitting corrupted data. The Vare scientists immediately tried to understand what was happening. Dr. Vela watched the readings and whispered, "The planet is interfering with them again." Serac asked. "How?" She pointed toward the atmospheric data: electromagnetic interference, biological particles, weather turbulence, and something else. Something we haven't identified. The council leader demanded that the humans explain the interference. Mitchell answered. "That's Earth," the council leader replied. "That's not an explanation." Mitchell smiled. "It's the only one you're gonna get." Then something unexpected happened. One of the Vare drones recovered its connection and transmitted an image from deep inside a human forest. The image showed a group of young human children walking through the trees with an adult guide. The children were laughing and pointing toward animals. They weren't wearing protective suits. They weren't carrying weapons, and they weren't afraid. Dr. Vela stared at the image. "Those children are unprotected." Mitchell nodded. "Yes." Vela looked horrified. "They're breathing the atmosphere, touching the plants, walking among the animals." "Yes," Mitchell replied again. Vela slowly understood. Humans didn't merely survive Earth, they were born into it. They learned its dangers before they could even speak. They grew up understanding which plants were safe, which animals should be avoided, how to read weather patterns, how to find water, how to build shelter, and most importantly, how to work together when nature became dangerous. The council leader watched the same footage and said, "Primitive survival behavior." Mitchell looked at him and replied, "That's where you're wrong. The human ability to cooperate had allowed them to transform survival knowledge into civilization." Then another alarm appeared. One of the Vaer drones had detected a massive biological movement near a human city. The council leader immediately ordered the humans to explain. Mitchell checked the coordinates and froze. "That's a migration route," she said. Serac asked. "What is migrating?" Mitchell replied. "Something humans have learned to live with." Suddenly thousands of creatures began moving across the landscape. Enormous herbivores followed by predators. Birds filled the sky. Insects covered entire regions, and the human city remained calm because its infrastructure had been designed around these natural patterns. Roads closed automatically. Warning systems activated. Wildlife corridors opened, and human vehicles changed routes. The Vaer watched in amazement as millions of humans adapted to the movement. "Without panic," Dr. Vela whispered. "They planned their cities around the planet instead of forcing the planet to change." Mitchell nodded. "Exactly. And that's why we survived." The council leader remained unconvinced. He ordered a larger drone to descend into the atmosphere. But the moment it entered a storm system, lightning struck it. The drone survived but lost navigation, and it began falling toward a populated area. The human military immediately detected the problem. Fighter aircraft launched. But instead of destroying the drone, they guided it away from the city. One aircraft connected to the drone's control system and stabilized its descent. The Vaer watched as humans rescued a machine belonging to a civilization that had just accused them of being dangerous. Serac looked at Mitchell and asked, "Why save it?" Mitchell answered, "Because there were people below. The drone wasn't the problem. The consequences were." Serac stared at her for several seconds, then quietly said, "Your species thinks differently," Mitchell replied. "Earth taught us to." Meanwhile, the Galactic Council fleet received an unexpected transmission from one of its own scientists. A researcher had been studying human historical records and discovered something shocking. Humanity had experienced mass extinctions, global wars, pandemics, climate disasters, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and countless environmental catastrophes. Yet every time humans had approached the edge of extinction, they adapted, cooperated, and rebuilt. The council leader asked, "What are you suggesting?" The scientist replied, "Perhaps Earth didn't create weak life. Perhaps it created resilient life." The statement spread through the fleet, and for the first time several council officers began questioning the mission. But one military commander refused to accept it. Admiral Kor, commander of the council's security fleet, believed humans were too dangerous to leave unchecked. He secretly ordered his ships to activate weapons. Serac detected the power surge immediately. He contacted the admiral and demanded an explanation. Kor replied, "We cannot allow humanity to develop further," Serac shouted. "They have done nothing," Kor answered. "That's what makes them dangerous. They have survived everything without us. What happens when they stop needing us?" The transmission ended, and hundreds of alien warships began positioning themselves around Earth. Commander Mitchell received the warning and immediately entered the central command room. General Hale was already there, the same general who had overseen Earth's hidden defense projects. Mitchell asked, "How many?" Hale answered, 412 ships." Mitchell looked at the screen, then at the Vaer captain. Serac said, "My people did not authorize this." Hale nodded. "I believe you." Then he activated another display. The hidden human fleet appeared from behind the moon. Hundreds of enormous vessels emerged from concealed positions, followed by thousands of smaller fighters. Serac stared in disbelief. These ships were larger than anything the Vaer had ever seen. But Hale didn't order them to attack. Instead, he transmitted one message to the entire alien fleet. "You are entering Earth's defensive perimeter. Power down your weapons and leave." Admiral Kor responded with laughter. "You think you can threaten the Galactic Council?" Hale answered. "No, we're giving you a chance to leave before anyone gets hurt." Kor ordered his fleet to advance, and the moment the first alien warship crossed the defensive boundary, Earth's entire planetary defense network activated. But instead of firing missiles or energy weapons, the planet itself seemed to come alive. Underground structures opened. Orbital platforms unfolded. Ocean-based launch systems rose from beneath the waves, and thousands of human defense drones appeared around the alien fleet. Serac stared at the display and finally understood what humanity had been hiding. Earth wasn't defended by one giant weapon. Earth was defended by everything humans had learned from living there. Every harsh environment had taught them something. Every disaster had forced them to improve. Every predator had taught them observation. Every war had taught them strategy. Every failure had taught them adaptation. And now all of that knowledge had been turned into one enormous defensive system. Admiral Kor ordered his fleet to fire, but before the first weapon could discharge, something even stranger happened. The human fleet disappeared. Every human warship vanished from the alien sensors at the same time. Kor shouted, "Where did they go?" Serac looked at the display and whispered, "They're underneath us." Then the space beneath the alien fleet began glowing, and hundreds of human ships emerged from hidden orbital positions directly behind the Council. Fleet completely surrounding them, Commander Mitchell opened a channel and said, "You wanted to know why humans survived on Earth. The answer is simple. We learned never to underestimate an environment just because it looks beautiful, and never to underestimate an enemy just because they look stronger." Admiral Kor stared at the human fleet surrounding him. But before he could respond, every sensor in the solar system detected a new object entering the outer system. Something massive, something moving faster than any known ship. General Hale looked at the display and his expression changed. Mitchell asked, "What is it?" Hale answered, "We don't know." Serac checked the readings and suddenly became pale. "That isn't one of our ships." Mitchell turned toward him. "Then what is it?" Serac stared at the incoming signal and whispered, "It's from outside the Galactic Council's territory, and it's heading directly toward Earth." The entire room became silent because for the first time since the aliens arrived, humanity wasn't the most dangerous thing in the solar system. Something else had noticed Earth, and whatever was coming had crossed thousands of light years for one reason. It wanted to find out why humans had survived the Deathworld. The object approaching Earth appeared on every sensor at once, but no human system could identify it. No VAIR database recognized its design, and even the Galactic Council's most advanced scanners returned nothing except one terrifying fact. The object was enormous, far larger than any warship currently known to exist. General Hale stared at the display as the unidentified vessel crossed the outer edge of the solar system. Commander Mitchell asked how fast it was moving. The answer came immediately, faster than anything we've ever tracked. Hale looked toward Captain Serac. "Is it your people?" Serac shook his head. "No, and I don't think it belongs to anyone in this galaxy." The room became silent, because every major civilization in the galaxy had assumed they understood the limits of interstellar travel, but the approaching object was moving as if those limits didn't exist. Admiral Kor received the same information aboard his flagship, and for the first time since arriving at Earth, he forgot about humanity completely. His entire fleet turned toward the incoming object, sensors activated at maximum power, and then the first transmission arrived. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't a language. It was a sequence of mathematical patterns. Dr. Vela immediately began decoding it, her expression becoming more confused with every second. Serac asked, "What does it say?" She answered, "It's asking a question." "What question?" Vela looked toward Earth and whispered, "Why are you still alive?" Nobody understood the meaning. Then another transmission arrived. This time every human communication system received it. Every alien ship received it. And every electronic device on Earth displayed the same message. "We have been watching your world." Humanity had no idea how to respond. The object continued approaching, and slowly its shape became visible. It wasn't a conventional spacecraft. It looked like an enormous structure made from dark metallic material, surrounded by rings of pale light. Its surface appeared to shift constantly, as if the ship itself were changing shape. Admiral Kor ordered his fleet to prepare weapons, but Commander Mitchell transmitted a warning. "Don't fire," Kor demanded. "Why?" Mitchell replied, "Because you don't know what that is," Kor answered. "Neither do you." Mitchell looked at the approaching object and said, "Exactly, which is why we're not going to make the first mistake." The alien fleet remained in position, and the human fleet did the same. For the first time, humans and aliens were standing together against something neither understood. The object stopped. beyond Mars, and a beam of light appeared between it and Earth. Not an attack, but a communication channel. The figure that appeared inside the beam was unlike any species the Vare had ever seen. It had no visible eyes, no mouth, no limbs. Only a tall humanoid silhouette surrounded by shifting patterns of light. Dr. Vela stared at the image and whispered, "It's not biological." The entity spoke directly into every mind and every communication system at once. "We are the observers. We have watched your species for 200,000 years. Captain Serac stepped forward. "Why?" the entity answered. "Because Earth was supposed to kill you." Serac froze. Mitchell's expression changed. "What do you mean?" the entity replied. "Your world was not always a death world millions of years ago. Earth was carefully prepared, its atmosphere altered, its ecosystems seeded, its predators designed to compete, its environment made increasingly hostile. The galaxy thought this was natural evolution. It was not." Dr. Vela looked horrified. "Someone created Earth," the entity answered. "Someone created the conditions that made humanity possible," General Hale immediately asked. "Who?" The entity remained silent for several seconds, then said, "Your ancestors." Nobody understood, Mitchell asked. "What ancestors?" the entity replied. "Humanity's oldest ancestors were not native to Earth, they were survivors, millions of years ago. An ancient civilization faced extinction from a threat that consumed entire worlds. They searched for a planet where their descendants could survive, and they chose Earth because it was one of the few worlds capable of producing extreme biological resilience. The ancient civilization disappeared, but its genetic legacy remained. Humanity." Serac stared at the display. "You are saying humans were engineered," the entity answered. "Not engineered, adapted. Your ancestors were given knowledge, then forced to survive without it. Earth became the test. Generation after generation, humanity learned to survive without realizing it was being tested." Commander Mitchell looked toward General Hale. "All those ancient ruins we discovered, all those unexplained artifacts." Hale nodded slowly. "Maybe they were never meant to be weapons. Maybe they were instructions." The entity continued. "Your species was never expected to become advanced enough to leave Earth, but you did. You developed technology, language, civilization, and eventually space travel. Then the entity sent another message, and that is why we came. Because humanity has passed the final test." The Vare scientists were stunned. "What test?" Dr. Vela asked. The entity answered, "Survival without becoming monsters." The room became silent. The entity explained that countless species had been placed on difficult worlds throughout the galaxy, but almost all failed. Some became extinct. Others destroyed their own ecosystems. Others became so aggressive that they conquered neighboring worlds. Humanity was different. Humans fought among themselves, sometimes terribly. But they also learned cooperation. They protected weaker members, rescued strangers, rebuilt after disasters, and developed technology not only to conquer nature but to understand it. The Vare suddenly remembered the forest. The children walking without fear, the humans rescuing the damaged alien drone, the soldiers refusing to kill the creature when they could control it, and Dr. Vela finally understood. Humans didn't survive Earth because they were the strongest species on it. They survived because they learned how everything worked together. The entity continued, "That is why Earth was never a prison. It was a forge. Humanity had been shaped by every storm, every disease, every predator, every famine, every earthquake, and every disaster. And now the galaxy was about to discover what emerged from that forge." Admiral Kor looked toward the human fleet and finally lowered his weapons. He transmitted to Commander Mitchell. "I was wrong," Mitchell replied. "About what?" Kor answered. "I thought your world made you dangerous. Now I understand. Your world made you patient." The entity suddenly turned toward the Galactic Council fleet and sent another message. "But your civilizations have forgotten the lesson. You built worlds where nothing could hurt you. You removed every danger, eliminated every predator, controlled every climate, and eventually your people forgot how to adapt." The Vare fleet remained silent because they knew the entity was right. Their civilization had spent thousands of years eliminating environmental dangers, and in doing so, they had lost many natural survival skills. The entity then revealed the real reason it had come to Earth. Something was approaching the galaxy, a massive force from beyond known space, and the observers had come to determine which species could survive what was coming. Humanity was not being offered membership in some galactic alliance. Humanity was being asked to lead the defense. Mitchell asked, "Why us?" The entity answered, "Because when everything else fails, humans keep trying." That was the lesson Earth had taught them. When storms destroyed cities, humans rebuilt. When diseases spread, humans researched cures. When predators threatened settlements, humans studied them. When wars broke civilizations, humans eventually rebuilt. Humanity had learned the most important survival rule of all: adaptation never ends. Suddenly, the enormous object beyond Mars began transmitting coordinates. Hundreds of star systems appeared across every human and alien display. These were worlds that had already gone silent. Serac looked at the list and recognized several civilizations that had disappeared from the Galactic Council's records decades earlier. The entity explained. They were the first targets. The force coming toward the galaxy was already moving, and Earth was directly in its path. General Hale asked how much time they had. The answer shocked everyone. 43 days, Commander. Mitchell looked at the human fleet, then at the alien ships surrounding Earth. 43 days to prepare, she said. The entity replied, "No. 43 days to decide whether you will stand together, because if you continue fighting each other, Earth will be the first world to fall." The transmission ended. The enormous vessel moved away from Mars and disappeared into deep space, leaving the humans and aliens in silence. Admiral Core finally opened a channel to every ship in the solar system. "This is Admiral Core of the Galactic Council. All military operations against Earth are suspended. Effective immediately, Captain." Serac followed. "The Vare fleet will assist humanity in preparing its defenses." One by one, other alien commanders joined the channel. Species that had spent centuries competing now offered ships, technology, scientists, and soldiers. But humanity had one final surprise. General Hale activated Earth's classified planetary network, and thousands of hidden facilities around the planet opened. Underground factories began producing spacecraft. Ocean platforms launched orbital vessels. Lunar bases activated construction systems, and deep beneath Earth's surface, enormous human ships began rising for the first time. Serac stared at the display and asked, "How long have you been building these?" Hale smiled. "Since we realized that surviving Earth wasn't the end of the challenge." Serac stared at the display and asked, "How long have you been building these?" Hale smiled. "Since we realized that surviving Earth wasn't the end of the challenge." Serac looked at the enormous human fleet rising from beneath the planet and suddenly understood that everything he had witnessed since landing on Earth had been only the beginning. He turned toward Hale and asked, "What exactly are those ships designed to fight?" Hale didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward the main command table and activated a hidden display. The image that appeared showed a massive alien fleet approaching from beyond the galaxy, millions of vessels moving together like a dark storm across the stars. Serac's expression changed. "That's impossible. No civilization has a fleet that large," Hale replied. "That's why we stopped preparing for civilizations. We started preparing for extinction-level threats." Dr. Vela stepped closer to the display and noticed something terrifying. Several of the incoming ships were already larger than moons. She whispered, "How can you possibly defeat something like that?" Hale looked toward Earth and said, "We don't know yet, but that's never stopped humans from trying." The first human warship emerged from beneath the Pacific Ocean, its enormous hull rising through the clouds as if an entire city had suddenly become a spacecraft. Serac watched in disbelief as hundreds of smaller vessels launched around it, forming defensive formations above the atmosphere. Hale continued, "Every disaster Earth gave us taught us something. Every predator taught us patience. Every war taught us strategy. Every natural disaster taught us preparation. And every failure taught us that the next solution had to be better." Then he activated another display showing thousands of human facilities hidden across the planet. Underground factories, lunar shipyards, mountain bases, and orbital construction platforms. Serac stared at the numbers and realized humanity had not simply been preparing for war. They had been preparing for the possibility that one day the entire galaxy would become a battlefield. Vela asked, "Why didn't you tell the Galactic Council?" Hale laughed quietly. because the last time someone saw a human weapon before understanding why we built it, they decided they wanted to take it. Serac suddenly understood why Earth had remained so secretive. Humans had learned the same lesson from their own history that they had learned from nature. Anything dangerous should be understood before it was controlled. Hale pointed toward the approaching alien fleet and said, "We don't want their worlds, we don't want their resources, and we don't want their people. We just want our species to survive." Serac looked at him and asked, "And if survival requires fighting?" Hale answered, "Then we fight. But only until the threat is gone. Never because we enjoy it." The command room suddenly shook as the first enemy vessel entered the outer solar system. Every human display turned red, and for the first time the aliens saw the true scale of Earth's response. Thousands of warships emerged from hidden locations around the moon, Mars and the asteroid belt. Then even more appeared beyond Neptune, forming defensive lines across the entire solar system. Serac whispered, "You built all of this without anyone knowing." Hale smiled. "Earth taught us one important rule. You never wait for the storm before building the shelter." Then the largest human vessel began moving forward, its engines illuminating the darkness behind it, and written across its hull was a name that made Commander Mitchell stand silently for several seconds. Ewan's humanity's dawn. The first ship designed to carry Earth's entire civilization if the planet itself ever became impossible to defend. Serac looked at the vessel and asked, "Is that your flagship?" Hale shook his head. "No, that's our evacuation ship." Serac stared at him in confusion. "Then where is your warship?" Hale pointed toward the far side of the moon, where a completely black structure slowly emerged from the shadows. It was so large that the VAIR scanners initially classified it as an artificial moon. Serac's eyes widened as he whispered, "What is that?" Hale looked at the screen and answered, "That's the reason we never told the galaxy what humanity had been building." The black vessel activated its engines, and every ship in the solar system moved aside as it passed. Its name appeared across the tactical display, UNS Terra, and as its main weapon began charging, every alien in the command center finally understood the truth. Humanity had never believed Earth was the end of its story. Earth had been the beginning.